Okay, folks, today I am joined by Reid Scott, an actor you know from projects such as Veep, My Boys, the Venom franchise, and his new film, Who Invited Charlie, which released on February 3rd. What's going on, Reid?
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm
Sure.
so glad we also have a solid amount of time to chat. These are my favorites, so we can really get in deep. I want to start with your new film, Who Invited Charlie. It stars you, Adam Pally, and Jordana Brewster, and it falls under the unwanted guest friend genre, which the ones that pop into my head are you, me, and Dupree. I also think one of the best performances in this genre is Philip Seymour Hoffman in Along Came Polly.
Yeah.
Which of these is your favorite types of films, and which friend would you be in real life, and why?
I love these movies, man. I came up on, like Planes, Trains, Automobiles, John Candy and Steve Martin, it's a classic. Uncle Buck,
Yep.
which is obviously a huge inspiration for the film. Great Outdoors. Great Outdoors might be my favorite because Dan Aykroyd in Great Outdoors is just so unhinged and so off the hook funny that movie meant so much to me. He reminded me of my uncle growing up too. So I think I really like that. No offense to my Uncle Richard, who's probably watching this.
Uncle Dick. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Uncle Dick. Uh, but yeah, and who would I be? I don't know. I'm definitely not the larger than life type, which is kind of why I identified with the Phil character in our movie. But yeah, more the Steve Martin character in Planes, Trains, Automobiles. I just love that character, and I think Adam Pally in our movie just nailed it. I mean, I think the world has been waiting. Everyone knows how funny he is, but to see the sort of heart that he can bring to the character too, he just crushed it.
Yeah, those scenes with your son are real good. I was not really familiar with his work beforehand, but yeah, he's good in those.
He's great.
So I so it is um so it is literally part of the gig, but I'm curious what it's like to play these sort of unabashed assholes and how you leave that at work. Is there like a process where you wake up, you make your kids food, you take them to school, and then all right, you're in jerk mode? Like, how does that sort of work for you?
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of been it's I would be lying if I said it wasn't a hell of a lot of fun to go to work and like play a prick. It's fun, it is. It's like you get to say all the things no one gets to say, do all the things no one gets to do, and then people clap. I mean, that shit's pretty cool. That being said, I don't know. I do get asked this from time to time. I think the reason why I sort of carved out this little niche of playing like, the privileged white prick is that I've seen so many of these guys in real life, and I actually do have utter disdain for them. So I've tried to make it, very, very carefully craft these characters where it's like, I want to highlight the things about them that I absolutely hate so that the audience can hate them as well. But I want them to like them enough that you're really sort of like, oh man, my feeling about this guy is really twisted inside out. Like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Like, you want to sort of root for these guys a little bit and hope that, maybe someday he won't be such a jerk. But at the same time, that's what he represents. That's where that comedy comes from for those particular projects. I guess I'm lucky that I'm playing an asshole.
You and I are from the same neck of the woods, so I know the exact type of guy that you mean. And I'm going to talk about. I live in Hoboken now, but I've lived in the North Jersey, New York area my whole life, and so I'm going to ask you about that Jets line in a bit. But I do want to go to sort of the earnest side of this film. This was a pretty earnest look at finding connection during trying times, which I mean, like, is something that we could literally all relate to in general, but having just experienced this unique example, what's the key to sort of weaving that into a comedy without coming across as preachy?
That's a great question, man. It was something we were very conscious of, like, first of all, to make any movie that even touches on the pandemic is it's sensitive. You never know how people are going to react to it. So we really wanted to use the pandemic as like, look, it's the catalyst for the story. It's why these characters are all thrust together, but we didn't want to harp on it. We didn't want to go back. There was comedy to be mined out of that initial wave of paranoia that we all had, like, wearing masks, how close can you get, all that kind of stuff. But we didn't want to push an agenda or make it seem like our characters fell on either side of the politicized spectrum.
And I think you guys nailed that. I didn't get any, and not so much preachy in terms of wear your mask, but just sort of preachy in terms of here's what happens when we all stick together,
Totally. We didn't want to do that either. Like we wanted to draw real characters with real problems and show how some of these real problems can really get solved when we open ourselves up to, some solutions that might not occur to us in the first place. But also we didn't want it to be like saccharine and, everyone gets along in the end and let's just have like one big collective hug. Like we wanted to give it a happy ending and a nice sort of soft landing. But we wanted it to be real. I mean, like this family at the end of it, we still have a lot of problems to sort through. We just have the one thing that I think got us all through the pandemic is now we have hope that we can solve these problems. But we didn't wrap up our issues by the end of the movie.
Yeah. And what helps you guys is that this is a genre that existed before COVID, right? Like the sort of, I'm stuck with this weird friend was already kind of a thing. So you guys just used a very realistic framework to tell that story. So I think that's a huge help in that sense. So you do touch on something that I want to ask, and I enjoyed it. So when COVID first broke out, I live on my own now, but I live with my two friends at the time, and I'm like a hypochondriac in general. So I was the one wearing gloves to the store, and I'd ask them, do you guys want gloves? And they fucking laughed at me. And of course, in hindsight, I do find it funny and silly. That's why these jokes work. But how do you go about balancing telling jokes without marginalizing the very real fears that people had at the time? Like when you're sort of constructing the scene where you have to press the button or, you can't stand too close to each other, so you put the tape down on the floor. How did you craft these jokes without, quote unquote, pissing people off too much, I guess?
I think honestly, we drew from our own experiences, and I know for myself, like when COVID first hit, I was like, man, I'm fucking built for this. Like, I kind of liked it. I liked being holed up in my house with my family. I'm a bit of a homebody. I was like just fixing everything in the house. We made the bread, we made cookies every day. I wouldn't say I'm a survivalist, but I think, coming from the Northeast, I like gear. So I have a lot of shit. And I was like, great, get out the gas stoves and all this kind of stuff. But I remember, I have two little kids. So I remember having to be careful. It's like I wasn't particularly scared. I was concerned and I tried to, take it seriously, but I wasn't really scared at first. Maybe I should have been. I don't know. But in regards to my kids, I was like, I need to be careful. So it was a lot of things that were like, I went out and we live in California. So we have an earthquake kit. I opened up the earthquake kit and right on top were KN95 masks and gloves. And I was like, well, I mean, when else are we going to fucking use these things? So like,
right.
So whenever we were coming up with these jokes, it almost didn't even occur to us that we would, be marginalizing, because we weren't making fun of the concern, because we all had the same concerns. It's only in retrospect that we're able to sort of laugh at it now and be like, oh my God, remember, when like you didn't have a mask? What did you do when you didn't have a mask? You pulled your shirt up. We were wearing bandanas on our face. Yeah. I remember one time it was like, I was on some blog. It's like, all right, here's how you take a pair of like fresh cotton undies and make it into a mask. It's like, we all did that shit. And looking back, it is a little funny. Now, how COVID affected people, who were like, that's not funny. So we don't make any joke about that.
Right.
But we were all, improvising, man. We were all floundering out there. And that's, you have to find comedy in that.
Yeah. So the last thing that I want to touch on for this film is a specific line. I burst out laughing. I really did. There is a character who people will probably remember as the director from Entourage.
Yeah. Billy Walsh.
Yeah. So you're kind of you and him are going back and forth, and you go, "What? You don't make bad choices? You have season tickets to the fucking Jets, Ray." And I mean, I'm a Jets fan. My dad's from Queens. It's in my blood. The Jets have pushed me to a point of like sporting nirvana, where now their terribleness actually brings me joy. Like that's how far deep I've gone. Where did that line come from? Do you relate to it as a New York sports guy?
I do. I mean, I'm a Giants fan. I'm, Giants, Yankees, Knicks, Rangers.
Okay.
And my buddy Nick Scott, who wrote the movie, is just like me. He's a diehard Giants fan, but we have tons of friends who are Jets fans. And there's nothing more fun for Giants fans than to give our Jets buddies, an appropriate amount of shit.
It's such a good line.
That's all it was. It was just sort of like, here's a nice, fun little dig that our friends are going to get.
Yeah.
And Reid Scott, who's fucking hilarious in everything he does. It was so fun to sort of battle back, because we all know that guy. We also know the Giants prick who lives on the Upper East Side and thinks Eli was actually a really good quarterback and didn't get lucky with that receiving core, which we all know he did. We all know that I could have won that Super Bowl with that receiving core. So sorry, Eli. But it was just a fun little inside joke to our buddies in New York.
Eli, man, careful. He's a funny dude. He'll come for your job next.
I think Eli is awesome. I think he's great. Yeah. But I'm a hater because we went through some lean years as I'm a huge sports guy too. So I'll talk about sports for the next half hour. But
well, good luck paying Jones. What I hear is 35 to 40 mil per year. Definitely worth it.
I hope so. Oh God, I hope so. I mean, the Giants have a terrible track record of overspending where we shouldn't. And then what do you do with that guy? So look, I think Jones had a great season. He definitely
got to keep him. You got to keep him.
You got to keep him. It's the same issue. Like as a Yankees fan, we went through this with Aaron Judge. It's like he had a phenomenal season. Yeah. I hope he lives up to this incredible contract that he got.
All right, let's swing to Veep. One of the funniest things I've seen in my entire life. I watched it for the first time actually during 2020, and it was one of those shows that literally, like, as soon as I got up, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to watch Veep that day. Nice. It was obviously a topic during the Trump years, but I think what's magic about this show is it remains increasingly relevant and prescient, I'm finding, regardless of who's in charge. So how is the show changing in your eyes as the years go by?
It's really been interesting. It was something that was very purposefully done in regards to the creators to never really define what side of the aisle our group of despicable people really fell. Like, if you really want to read between the lines, you could probably guess and you'd probably be right, but we tried to keep it as ambiguous as possible for that exact reason, because we wanted the show to be able to live on. And it's an indictment of everyone that works in politics, not one side versus the other. But one thing that we saw, which was really interesting, because the show sort of caught on, obviously, with the political community, we got invited to a lot of events. So we got to go to the press correspondence dinner. I got to meet Joe Biden backstage when he was vice president at an event, meeting all kinds of senators and congressmen and women. It was really remarkable. And from both sides of the aisle. And consistently, everyone we met, if they were Democrat, they would always say, God, we love what you guys are doing to the Republicans on your show. Then if you met a Republican, they said, like, oh, the way you guys are trashing the Democrats is just so perfect. And it was like, this is why it's working, is that it doesn't really come down on one side or the other. So it sort of allows the audience to fill in the blank with whatever their political leanings are and show just what utter buffoons. And look, there's a lot of good people in politics too, but they're human. And that was it. It's like, the human foibles that exist in this office comedy, but the stakes are so high because it's American politics.
So something I try to do is I try to put myself and fans in your shoes, right? So I'm sure you've talked about Veep thousands of times, but I'm curious, when you shut your eyes and you think about your time on that show, where's the first place your brain goes? Is it shooting a specific scene, a season, a moment, a joke?
I can tell you exactly where it is. There's one moment. I mean, there's so many moments, but there's one in particular that I will just never forget. It was season 1. We shot the first 4 seasons of the show in Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
Because it was close to DC.
Cheaper.
So, yeah, cheaper, big tax break. But it was also, our creators, a lot of people might not know this. Our creators were all British. It was sort of based on a British show called In the Loop. In the Thick of It. And so that was sort of halfway for everybody. So we're all on location, and we're shooting at a high school, and there was a scene where Julia's character thinks she might be pregnant for a second. And so she and Anna Klumsky dip into the little girl's room, and she pees in a cup, and she takes the test, and she comes out of the hall. She's holding her cup of urine, and we find out that someone in the press has called her repugnant. And she turns to me with this cup of urine. She goes like, "Why am I repugnant?" And the look on Julia's face was like, because she was so earnest. She's such an incredible actress. It was so real. I couldn't keep it together. I think I ruined every take because I would just laugh and laugh and laugh. And then she would laugh, and then Tony would laugh. And when Tony laughs, everybody laughs. And it was just one of the most fun days I've ever had on set, just goofing around with these heavy hitters of comedy. And it was one of the best feelings I've ever had. It was really great.
Julia, I am of the thought she's the funniest person alive.
She's probably the funniest person alive.
Yeah, I genuinely mean that. And kind of the same thing. I like to ask broad things. When you think about working with her, where does your mind go? Besides the cup of piss.
It was a masterclass. That's really what it was. That's the way I treated it early on. I was pretty intimidated. I think we were all intimidated.
I was going to ask that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she's
not just because she's playing such a bitch, just because of her as a professional.
Her comedic pedigree. She's the second cast of SNL.
Right.
It was her and Eddie Murphy, and now they're in a movie together, which is people is fucking hilarious. But she's been doing what she does so well for so long. Everyone knows her from Seinfeld, but I knew her from the old SNL days before that. So, and Seinfeld just vaulted her into sort of legendary status.
I think she's better in Veep.
I think so too. I think it was the role, it was the role she was always meant to play.
Yeah.
So she was attached when I read the script, and I was just like, I'll do anything I can just to be next to her and learn from her. And then we showed up day one, and as we're sort of getting to know everyone, it's slowly kind of circulated through the rest of the cast. It's like, wow, we are all very intimidated by Julia, but she's so down to earth. She's such a jeans and t-shirt kind of gal, roll up the sleeves, let's get to work, let's make this fun, let's connect so that we're all vibing together, that we became friends within hours. And then it was, how does our band play this particular kind of jazz together? Who takes the lead in this scene? Who's keeping the beat for us? And she's very generous too. She would hand it off. She's like, "This is your joke." And the writers were the same. By the end, it was so collaborative, and there was so much improvisation that you forgot who came up with one bit. Sometimes Julia would come up with a bit. She'd be like, "Oh, you know what Dan should do? Try this." She'd be like, "Oh, that's great." And I'd say, "Hey, you know what? If you could sort of give it to me like this," she'd be like, "Okay, fantastic." It was a band working together to make the best possible music we could. And it was really, really fun.
That does kind of touch on something that I'm going to ask about in a bit if we have time, because the insults are so personal. I imagine that it had to be a collective process, What do you think is the funniest line you ever got to say, and what was the meanest insult you ever received?
Oh man, I don't even remember what I got to say, but my favorite of all time was probably Jolly Green Jizz Face. Is just one of the greatest. It's a classic. All children should be taught, in 3rd, 4th grade. If you really want to get someone, you call him Jolly Green Jizz Face.
And then
that was one of my all-time favorites. And then
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And what was the second part?
Oh no, it was just the best line that you had, and then the meanest thing that you had gotten called.
I think I really enjoyed coming up with hepatitis J when I'm they're all directed at Jonah.
I was just gonna say, so what was the relationship with you and Tim Simons off camera? Because the dynamic between Dan and Jonah is honestly one of the funniest things on TV that I could recall, because they are so diametrically opposed that anytime they're in the same space, it's only barbs. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. I think, and we had so much fun doing that. Tim and I, we became great friends. Everybody did.
Yeah.
You know, my weekends, our time off, it was, you know, Matt Walsh and Tony Hale and Tim Simons and I hanging out, going to movies, you know, playing squash, drinking a little too much probably here and there. And then when Gary Cole came along, you know, he folded in the mix, and Kevin Dunn folded in the mix, and Sam Richardson folded in the mix. And it was really fun, really, really fun. But we all knew what the joke was. At first, we were all sort of like kind of tiptoeing around these insults because rightfully so, they were very personal digs at the character, which is a lot of like appearance-based stuff at first. And at first, you know, we'd try it in rehearsal and be like, you know, whatever barb it was, and then you know, they yell cut, and we'd immediately be like, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, you know that I don't feel that. It's this writer over here made me say it. And everyone's got thick skin. We're like, yeah, it's just to make it funny. And Tim definitely bore the brunt of a lot of that stuff. But Tim is also one of the funniest guys you will ever meet. And he gets the joke. And that's what it was all about at the end of the day. So he like, you know, they yell cut, and he'd be laughing harder than anybody. And he could give his, you know, he gave as good as he got. Everybody.
Tim, I think has the best joke that I heard in the show. The one that sticks in my brain is towards the end. And sorry, kids out there, he goes, how am I doing? I'm eating so much pussy, I'm shitting clit, son. And then the camera pulls back, and he's in a classroom.
Yeah, dude, it's insane. It's insane. And it was so fun to just watch that character just get dialed up over the 7 seasons. By the end, we were all just like the most despicable people on TV. It was great.
Oh man. So I now want to swing over to Venom.
Yeah.
You were in the legendary scene where Tom Hardy hopped into the lobster tank. Please walk me through your memories of shooting that scene, both as an actor in the film and just as a pure observer watching Hardy do whatever it was that he was doing.
Hardy's a beast. Tommy is an absolute beast. And I think Venom was kind of the first time people really got to see it. He's incredibly funny. He's a very, very funny guy. His dad was a comedy writer. So it's like Tom gets the joke, you know, and he loves to play. He loves to play around. He'll spend most of the day playing around. You know, like you might get like one take because we spent the whole day just like sort of fucking around, which is really, really fun. And Michelle too. Michelle Williams is really, really funny. And she loved to play. That whole scene, actually, when we shot it, was so much bigger. We worked out this massive, sprawling physical comedy bit, which a lot of it's in there, but trust me when I tell you, it was twice as long. You know, there was, you know, the guy getting punched in the face, and then me sort of resetting his nose, and it just went on and on and on and on. And we had it perfectly choreographed. It was so much fun. To the end where, you know, he jumps in the lobster tank, crunches on the lobster, and then I think jumps out at one point. He collapses to the ground. And what we had originally shot is I came down sort of like, you know, hey, you okay, buddy? And Venom's arm sort of lashed out to sort of like flick Dr. Dan away. And they had me hooked up to this harness. I got to do the stunt myself. I was really excited about that. Cool. And they yanked me. I think I flew like 60 feet in the air into a crash pad. And it was awesome. And we had so much fun. That might have been the most fun we had during the whole shoot. And then we got a note, which is, you know, studio notes give studio, you know, studio people give studio notes above my pay grade. They were like, it's too funny. What? It was like, it became too much of a comedy. And it's like, oh man, all right. And I still think that the audience really would have loved to see what we did. But that whole day was just great. Just, you know, playing with Michelle Williams and Tom Hardy and just, you know, clowning for 8 hours. And everyone was so down to just try it. Like, what is it? Let's try it. Let's get messy. Let's get wet. Let's get dirty. And it was a blast. It was an absolute blast.
Any updates on the third one that you could share?
Not yet. I know it's coming, but I know nothing.
No call yet. Your phone's on though, right?
Oh yeah.
All right, then real quick, just before I wrap up here, I got to ask about your brief stint on Curb. You know, you go from one legend to the next. Was it surreal filming that? I'm always curious about like career milestones, and I got to imagine sharing scenes with Larry David had to have been one.
Oh, it was huge.
How did it feel to step onto a set with him and share scenes?
It was a dream. I've been waiting for that opportunity for so long. Again, since the Seinfeld days. And I'd gotten to know Larry a little bit through Julia. Obviously,
Right.
like they're really close friends, and Larry.
Did she put in the good word?
I don't think it was so much that. I think he admired the show. He and Julia are very, very close. David Mandel, who was one of the bigger writers on Seinfeld, came over to showrun our show for the last 3 seasons. So again, we just had so many kind of circuitous connections. Larry presented us with our Emmy when we won the first year that Veep won.
Cool.
So it's like, he was a huge supporter of us all. When that came around, it just seemed like a natural fit. They just called me up one day. So like, hey, do you want to come play? And I was like, oh my God, like, yeah, like what time do you need me there? I'll be there. And then he told me, it's like, yeah, you're going to be playing this guy, Don Jr. And I was like, oh yeah, I know just what to do. This is going to be a lot of fun. And Larry, again, is so generous and so fun. And most of the day on Curb is like, the script is very
loose,
almost like bullet points.
Yeah.
Like they have an idea of what they want, and then you spend a lot of the day rehearsing it and finding the funny on your own, which is why it feels so real and so natural. So again, like you're sitting down and you're playing with Larry David, all day trying to figure out, well, we know what we want to say, but how do we make it funny? And if it's funny to us, it'll be funny to everybody else. And just all the stuff we came up with, it was like, it was an embarrassment of riches. I'm sure 90% of the stuff that we came up with, it didn't even make it into the cut. But they just shoot. Try this. And, they sort of cherry pick the best parts. But Larry is so down to hear what you want to do. What do you think is funny? How do you want to try it? Very laid back set. And I think that's very conducive to comedy. You can't put a stranglehold on comedy. It wants to sort of live and breathe and sort of, be its own thing. And that's why that show is such a huge success.
And then final housekeeping update before I let you go. Are you involved in season 2 of the after party at all?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I wish I was. It was a lot of fun. They're sort of taking it in a whole new direction this time.
Gotcha.
A few of the characters sort of carry over, but it's a whole new storyline, which I can't wait to see because those guys are genius.
Yeah.
My boy Sam Richardson.
Oh,
it's like
he's blowing up, man.
He's blowing up. Honestly, I gotta say, like Julia, watch out because like Sam might be the new funniest guy
alive.
Yeah. So,
wow.
So yeah, I'm excited.
All right, Reid, thank you so much for your time, and your career seems like a blast, and you seem like you are aware of that. So that is just so much fun to see from a fan's point of view.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, man.
Cheers, man, and good luck to your Giants, huh?
Yeah. Here we go. Let's see.
Buddy.
Next season.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.